So the NFL draft last night was a interesting experience. One, it was just interesting with how they did things logistically, and also it was interesting how things landed for the Browns at the front of the draft and at the end of the draft. I think it's very fortunate for the Cleveland Browns. It's going to mean good things for them. The first thing we're going to jump into is that the Browns somehow found a way to have the 10th pick and end up with the best offensive tackle in this draft, bar none, especially in the pass blocking department in Jedrick Wills. Jedrick Wills is somebody I did not expect to be available for the Browns. I thought he would be for sure the first tackle taken, but the Giants went a different direction. And you know what? That's great for the Browns because Jedrick Wills, I think, is a legit starting left tackle, a good starting left tackle in NFL. I think he's going to do a lot of good for this offense and be able to protect Baker Mayfield's blind side. And then you look across from him, you got Jack Conklin on the other side, who's more of a run blocker, but also a decent enough pass blocker to be able to stabilize the offense. And then you have J.C. Treader, you have Joe Bitonio. If both those guys can stay healthy, you really like what you have going there with, competition at right guard. And who knows, you could draft somebody who could fill in at right guard in the third or fourth round. It's not really unheard of. So the Browns really in good position when it comes to the offensive line, which looked like it was out of disrepair during the season. So hats off to Andrew Berry for that. And if you want to know more about why I think Jedrick Wills is such a great pick for the Cleveland Browns, I had him on the channel earlier this week, but if you go to Vach Lombardi's channel, he has like a 20-minute breakdown of Jedrick Wills' play at Alabama, and you really get to see in detail the technique and why Jedrick Wills is so coveted by so many people who I respect that talk about left tackles in this kind of draft sphere. So Jedrick Wills, getting him at 10, it's a great pick. And what I like even more about this is what I have liked about the Browns since they've hired Andrew Berry. That is that they have been able to just make decisions that at the end of the day makes sense. And I know that might sound ridiculous if you're not like a fan of the Browns or if you're kind of an outsider, but it's really true. The Browns don't normally make decisions that make a ton of sense. Normally, by this time in the draft, we have to do some kind of mental gymnastics to convince ourselves that what the Browns did was good. But throughout free agency and throughout the draft, there has been no mental gymnastics needed to justify a peculiar signing or a draft pick in the first round. And now, granted, he's only had one free agency and one pick in the draft so far, so I'm not going to go head over heels with that praise, but just what I've seen so far gives me credence to believe that they aren't making wild decisions, crazy decisions that have to be justified. And that's what I think has been the most positive thing about Andrew Berry so far. Now, these signings and these draft picks cannot work out. That's definitely a possibility. I hope against that. But, it so far the philosophy seems to make sense. It seems, again, that this commitment they made to have a unilateral vision from top down is paying off because now you're getting decisions that are uniform and make sense. And that's one thing that's drove the Browns crazy over the last 20 years is that they don't make uniform decisions and they don't make decisions that make sense within that uniform kind of ideology that they appear to be going for. No, all these decisions make sense. Every major acquisition so far has been something to help Baker Mayfield, whether it's Case Keenum to help him in the quarterback room, whether it's Austin Hooper to give him another option and another blocker at tight end. And then, Jack Conklin and now Jedrick Wills. The commitment and ideology and philosophy of this team is clear. It is one that has made sense, and it's one that hasn't required a ton of mental gymnastics. So I have to give Andrew Berry his credit so far. I can't go overwhelming and just say that Andrew Berry's right because time will ultimately tell on that. But so far, I like what I see, and I can't tell you that when John Dorsey got fired at the end of the season, that when we were at this point, I would have thought that I would have liked what I have seen from the replacement of John Dorsey. But Andrew Berry so far has made decisions that made sense and has made it easier for people to kind of forget about John Dorsey. I don't really see those arguments happening, and I think that is a badge to the credibility that Andrew Berry has had so far while working this job here. And I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think Andrew Berry has earned your trust so far? Let me know in the comment section what you think about that. Now we're going to also jump to another topic, which is, will the Browns make a move for safety? Because one thing that was unexpected that happened was that literally like almost none of the top safeties got drafted. I mean, I'm talking about guys like Xavier McKinney, Anton Winfield, and George Delpit still available to start the second round, all three. And that I wonder if the Browns should trade up in the second round to try to secure at least one of those guys, because safety is definitely a need there. I know they just signed Carl Joseph. He is a strong safety. Maybe they can go and get somebody like McKinney who could be a free safety. Even if they were going to go in that direction, I would probably suggest a Winfield or Delpit. But good options there at safety. And what we've learned in the NFL so far is that safeties have been getting overpaid in free agency recently. You look at the contract Eric Murray has signed. You look at some of the recent safety contracts. Even average marginal guys are getting ridiculous money. So I think if you're the Browns, if you can put out a 4th round pick to move up to the top of the second round, I would do that to make sure you secure one of these guys, because ultimately I think these guys have some value in the second round, not necessarily in the top 10 of a first round, but have some good value in the top 10 of a second round. So it's going to be interesting to see how that lines up, because I think it's very possible all three of these guys can be gone by the time the Browns pick at 41 or 44, wherever they pick in the second round, the 10th in the second round. So I think there's going to have to be a sense of urgency amongst the Cleveland Browns in order to land one of these guys. And landing one of these guys, I do think, should be a priority for the Browns. Now we're going to jump in some other topics in the NFL draft, things I saw that kind of got a real reaction out of me. And the first thing is Isaiah Simmons at number 8 to Arizona. Look, I'm not trying to be negative towards Isaiah Simmons. I don't think he's a bad player or a bad prospect, and I'm certainly not one of the people saying he's going to be a bust. But I do think when you draft a linebacker in the top 10 of an NFL draft, there is an expectation that that player has to be kind of a Luke Kuechly or a top tier kind of linebacker. And I just don't think Isaiah Simmons is that kind of impactful player. I think he'll be a good player. I don't necessarily think he's going to have the impact of a Luke Kuechly or Ray Lewis or people in that kind of category. And if you look at his tape in Clemson, he never really had those moments in Clemson. And you look at his ineffectiveness against Ohio State, his ineffectiveness against Joe Burrow and LSU. I just don't see him as a guy who's really going to change a game from his position. Sure, he could do some interesting stuff from Tampa too, and in a division like the AFC North, that would make a lot of sense because there is a Lamar Jackson, and that does solve some problems there. But for the Arizona Cardinals, it makes no sense. This pick makes no sense to me. They don't have the pieces on defense that would be able to facilitate him being able to play at the best of his ability. Their defensive line is bare minus Chandler Jones. And then, their secondary is aging. Their offense needed a tackle. They needed a lineman or something, another piece there. They have wide receivers. They have some pieces on offense. I don't want to say they don't. They definitely do. They have a ton of pieces on offense there with Kyler Murray. Larry Fitzgerald can still be productive. And they also have DeAndre Hopkins. I would have thought they would want to get a tackle to kind of protect their young quarterback in that situation, but they thought differently. And I just think getting Isaiah Simmons here just didn't make a ton of sense. I don't see why this was done here. It just didn't make any sense. I don't see what the big impact is going to be on the defense. I think he's going to be a good player, but I don't think he's going to change the game at that position. It was head scratching. It made no sense to me. Justin Herbert, I get why he went where he went. I get why he went to the team he went, and I get that that was going to happen. But I'm not a big fan of Justin Herbert. I think he reminds me a lot of Blaine Gabbert. Big guy, throws a lot of screens, not a guy who can really step into contact, not a guy who really steps up in the big moments. Not been impressed with what I've seen of him at Oregon, but I'm just not a big fan of Justin Herbert. I don't think he's going to be the solution. I think you have better options with Tyrod Taylor, quite frankly, Cam Newton and Jameis Winston all available. Tyrod's on your team. I think those are all better quarterbacks than Justin Herbert will pan out to be. I just don't see it there with Justin Herbert. I get it. People see it. I don't. I think a guy like Justin Herbert is like kind of the prototypical bust like that happens in the top 10. The guy in the mode of a Blake Bortles, the big, strong, tall, strong arm guy who has all the potential in the world but has not really produced as much as people would have hoped in college. I just think he fits that mold. I'm not a big fan of him. CeeDee Lamb, though, on the other hand, on the complete polar opposite, getting to 17 in the Cowboys is an absolute heist. It's an absolute heist. I don't know how that happened. I think CeeDee Lamb's one of the best players in this draft, let alone one of the best wide receivers. Don't know how he ended up at 17. Complete heist. Heist for the Cowboys. And some people can argue, sure, they should have took a safety. Sure, they had more pressing needs. But when CeeDee Lamb is available at 17 and you need a wide receiver, you take CeeDee Lamb. I don't understand why CeeDee Lamb fell. I think this is a result of people kind of overrating the depth of this class. I think it has good depth, but I don't think it has that much depth that you can just pass on a CeeDee Lamb a couple times. Doesn't make any sense to me, but, draft going draft. And then the other thing that just made no sense to me was Jordan Love getting drafted by the Green Bay Packers. I know everybody's going to have their hot take about this. Doesn't make sense. Aaron Rodgers has a lot of years on his deal. I understand he has an injury history, which does make sense, but Jordan Love's not a guy who's going to be able to step in there if there's an injury, and not a guy you want to step in there. They tried to develop DeShone Kizer behind Aaron Rodgers. That didn't work out. I think this is their second chance at doing this, but is Jordan Love really worth it? I know people are making the comparison that Aaron Rodgers was traded for and they drafted him when he was the same age as Brett Favre. That does make sense, but let's also remember that, Aaron Rodgers that year was supposed to be the number 1 overall pick and fell. That's a completely different situation than Jordan Love, who's supposed to be a 3rd round pick and just got hyped up to the 1st round. Two completely different situations. I don't see it with Jordan Love. I don't think he's going to be that great of a quarterback, but he could develop into something. I could be wrong. That's very possible. And if he does, then ultimately it was the right move, because if you go from franchise quarterback to franchise quarterback, that's always the right move. But if it doesn't work out, then this could be kind of one of the things that are going to destroy the relationship between your franchise quarterback and the franchise itself. So interesting move there. Don't know if Jordan Love's the guy would take that risk with, but the Packers decided that was necessary nonetheless. But that's my thoughts on what happened in day 1 of the draft. And stay tuned for the rest of the weekend. I'm going to have a reaction for day 2 and day 3 coming up the day after those days happen. So stay tuned on this channel. And if you don't want to miss anything, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, ding the notification bell so you don't miss a single video coming out. And always, always don't forget to have a great day and have a good night.